Okay, I'd like to call the December 9th Public Works Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Shar?
Here.
Mr. Pickard?
Here.
Mr. Reich?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mrs. Wolf? Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
Next on the agenda is correction and/or approval of minutes from last month. Any corrections? If not, motion to approve.
I move to approve. I'll second the motion.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is number 4, questions and public comment. If anybody wants to speak, please step up to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Diane Fritsch. I live at 609 Mulberry Street, Lake Mills. I wanted to stop tonight because I noticed that on your agenda, you're going to be discussing the lighting on South Main Street. And I just wanted to reiterate that when you're doing your searching through all the MyRaid poles and lights that are out there, that if you would please hone in on those that have a vintage or historical look to them so that we can continue that theme in our downtown, and hopefully that we can get some that will, make Lake Mills look even better than it is today. That's basically my message. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Seeing no other questions or public comment, we'll move on to item 5, discussion on disposition of Parks Building. In our packet was a appraisal, and the Parks Building is owned by the Light and Water Department, and that's why it's here, correct?
Yes, the city council has put together an RFP that'll be advertised that's looking for someone to start marketing the property. This is a utility building, and so it has to go through the Public Works Board as far as the disposition. I provided you with an appraisal that was done on the property of what the building's value is. You have an idea of what the expectations are for the property. We hope that we can market the property and come close to that appraisal. I don't know, we haven't really looked at and said we have any specific expectations for the reuse of the building. Like with the municipal building, we said that the building has to be used like this, and you have to restore the architectural features and those types of things. I don't know that that's a significant advantage for the reuse of this building. There is interest from multiple sources. I'm assuming that as it becomes more and more known that the property is available, we'll probably have more opportunities to sell it. But I did want you to know that the appraisal's out there. We do have an RFP to hire a realtor to market the property, and we'll start taking prices, and this will probably come back, and you'll have to be reviewing it.
There's absolutely, in staff's opinion, no use that you can see for the present building.
We believe that the highest and best use will be moving to the private sector if we reuse it. I guess our anticipation was, and from a public sector point of view, is parking. But I don't know that that's ultimately the best use of this property. If it went private and it had a assessed value of $100,000 or more, let's say someone bought it and upgraded it, made some substantial improvements to it, and it came in at $150,000 to $200,000 worth of assessed value. In my opinion, that would be the highest and best use of that property. From our standpoint, we've made arrangements to have all the uses consolidated as much as possible. So, all the storage, the gate storage and the cold storage is either done at the light and water utility or at either the wastewater or the DPW building.
What's the zoning? Is it any zoning at all?
Yes, it's zoned. It's business. It's
Business?
B1.
B1.
It's not B1C, it's B1.
But do you think if somebody needs it to be something different, it would go through, or?
Obviously, if they want to use it for something that requires different zoning, the B1 is our most general.
Okay,
The building might lend itself to an industrial use. I don't know that, they could request and make a request to the Plan Commission to get it rezoned. My anticipation is maybe B1 with a conditional use permit might be the preferred route to go.
okay.
I would think that property would be best served as some type of a business, but other than industrial business, something like, at the worst case, a garage, at the best case, some type of a store. Keeping with the theme of downtown business, it's right there. And then it's right by the school also, so I certainly wouldn't want to see an industrial complex being developed there.
I was thinking something like a
Blast furnace.
machine shop or something, that,
Yeah,
Yeah, Bob's
something like,
Metal Shop is right there.
Yeah.
But he's B1 with
Oh,
a conditional
okay.
use permit, so that's not out of the question. Obviously, the pottery has production facilities. That's still B1. In fact, I think that's B1C with a conditional use permit.
all right.
Now, you're not looking for a motion from the
No, this
board
is just
here.
informational.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
I might note that I did have an appraisal done on the DPW for the city's portion of the buying the building from the Light and Water. As you remember, the existing Public Works building is partially city and partially Light and Water. And with the city moving parks into there, we have to purchase the rest of the building from the Light and Water utility. And the appraisal came in at $1 million. The breakout of the purchase was 55% city, 45% utility, so we're buying it back at that rate. So $450,000 will be transferred from the city's community development fund, from the city's parks capital fund to the Light and Water utility before the end of the year. And it'll probably be about 337 to electric and about 112 to water.
Before the end of this year?
Yes.
Anything else?
if we pay them, then are they going to pay us rent?
No way.
Listen, you scared.
$1 a year.
No, you get $100 a year for the building on campus.
We'll swap you. Start having them pay taxes. Fix them.
They do pay taxes.
Yeah, I guess they do.
All right, moving on then to number 6, discussion on Lake Mills on-site lab report for the wastewater plant. We have a memo and a DNR report here, which is quite nicely done, or a very nice result.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's good news for wastewater treatment plant this month. Ken Bostetter is our lab guy and does a heck of a job, and this is just an acknowledgement that he's running a good lab. Certainly, if he didn't, we may not have caught some of the things that are going on so quickly or been so well aware of the extent of what's going on. But Ken and Bill and all those guys in the treatment plant take a lot of pride in what they do and make sure that what they do is right. And so we thought it'd be appropriate for you to know that that lab got a really good rating.
How long has Ken been doing this lab job?
Oh, my goodness. I think he's in his 7th or 8th year. Yeah.
give him my thanks, please.
We will, thank you very much.
Kudos.
Yeah. I think anybody that's doing a audit, they feel that their job is to find something wrong, and to find such little things here is a real testament, like you indicated, to the job being done there, so very good. Next on the agenda is discussion recommendation on wastewater system needs assessment report. And in our packet was a memo and a motion and a needs assessment report.
The memo provides information to the fact that we were authorized to do a needs assessment. Normally you do one every 5 years if you're collecting impact fees. The last one we did was in 1994. So it's been a few years. So we've put together a needs assessment. You use that to determine what your impact fees are going to be. So we are looking forward to finalizing this document. We had some discussion last time on kind of like the daisy wheel running from lift station to lift station or doing a manifold. Ultimately, I don't think, based on the cost breakout, that it makes a lot of difference which way we ultimately decide to go. The impact fees will remain relatively the same and will probably follow a very similar zone for how the impact fees are charged. So we recommend that you approve this facilities assessment so that we can start then doing the analysis on the impact fees. I'm sure that Mr. Mangan wants them done before he starts building his buildings this spring.
I'm sure.
Brandon is here. He was one of the primary ones on the report, so if you have any technical questions, he's more than willing to and capable of answering them.
When is it, when are we going to decide whether to go to the manifold system or the daisy chain?
We could probably wait until construction actually, and we spend more design money on the full design. Each one of them has some issues, and until you actually get into the full design criteria of the process, you're probably not going to really have a good idea of which way to go. But they're so close in cost and districts that it, as far as designing impact fees, it wasn't significant.
And there's no legal issue with if we do a needs assessment one way and then change it to another cost?
They're both within the same needs cost. They both provide the same benefit.
Right.
So from my position, whether you designate that it's a sewer system coming in, or if you know, either one is listed in here, so it could be either or.
Okay.
So-
So like you said, they're both in this report, and the impact fee doesn't have to specifically call out one or the other.
I don't think so. I think it can be, because they're so close together and they're both in the report and they both result in the same thing, which is
Right.
moving the wastewater towards the wastewater treatment plant. I think that
So you can
it
use
should be a
the cost of
legitimate-
the average of the two or something.
Just to elaborate, I think Steve is absolutely correct that the state statutes just say that you have to have a needs assessment that identifies projects and that the impact fees have to be used for those projects. And so since we have identified both pump station upgrades or a manifold system in this needs assessment, they could be used for either one.
I didn't shut mine off either. It'll ring any second. Check that.
So to sum it up, this needs assessment report, which will lead to a more detailed study on the design.
No, what this report does is allow us to generate impact fees.
Yeah,
At some point in time, whenever we decide to make those improvements, then then we'll do the design, and then we apply the impact fees to that. And that design probably would tell us which way would be our best option.
All right.
And they're kind of, each one has benefits and problems, and so as you try and figure out how your wastewater treatment plant is functioning, which for us has changed over the 15 years that I've been here, and the issues that occur at the wastewater treatment plant, by the time we actually start really doing some significant work on that system, it might be different by then.
Who pays those fees and how are they paid?
They're paid per lot construction. So you could buy a lot and you're not charged, but the second you go to put a house on that lot, you're charged.
What's a typical ballpark, just charge?
Now,
Yeah. And how might it change?
I think, water stayed the same, and I think water is about 2,700. The
We need Jim.
The wastewater, we're thinking, is going to go down based on your go down based on how close you are to the wastewater treatment plant. And it's lower than water, so it's probably 2,000, 2,200. Because if I remember right, the two of them together were just under 4,800 or something. And I should take that back, because there are 4 impact fees that we charge now. One is Parks and Rec, one is Community Center, and then there's water and sewer. But industrial and commercial don't pay the Parks and Rec and the Community Center, only residentials do, so.
And that's for city only, right? It doesn't apply to township?
Wastewater does apply
It
to
does apply to
township.
township.
Water does not, and the other ones do not, so.
Worth mentioning this would be possibly a new one or a different one? I guess I was just asking Steve, some of the manifold or pump station impact fees have the option, or it could be that they would have a different zone than, say, the city-wide impact fee. So if you were to build a house in like the southeast portion of the city, you would have a impact fee for sewer and water for the city. But there's the option that you can create impact fee zones where, say, you were to build a house on the northwest side of the lake, and that specific house would create a need to upgrade or replace a pumping station or create this manifold system. You can create a zone, say in this case would be mostly north and west of the lake, that would pay a separate impact fee that would be specifically identified for like pumping station 16 or a manifold force main to get it around the lake.
Does that need another study to set up zones?
Well, we've identified the facilities needs and where they're located, and they're based on watersheds. So generally, they're going to follow a watershed for the improvement, and as they go through and do the financial cost of upgrading each one of these facilities, they'll make a determination of what, if the zone should be paying additional fees or not. But that's not part of this right now.
Okay.
Yeah, what,
Other than the fact that we note that the facilities assessment has the option ultimately that you could pick zones or not zones.
yeah, our current sewer user or our sewer impact fee is attributable to the wastewater treatment plant processes. That's for building a new oxidation ditch and a clarifier. And so that's system-wide, whether you're in the city or in the town, everybody pays the same when they build and connect onto the sewer system. This would probably be different because what's happening with a lift station somewhere else where there's no way in the distribution system within the sanitary sewer that you are going to be making any impact to a particular area of lift stations, there would be no reasonable basis for you to have to pay extra for that. So I would strongly encourage that we do zones, and then whatever zone you're building in, that there would be a separate fee for that zone, and that would be the only way that I could see that it would be truly fair.
Okay.
So in the report, there was mention of this area is not included in this needs assessment because development in that area would likely be paid for by the developer. So in that case, is that something that's easily taken care of, that, they would probably not pay zone-based impact fees and would then end up paying for that improvement?
Which area wouldn't?
North.
No, they would be probably the most affected by zone fees in that, while the land that they're building on, they're building their own facilities.
But there's a
The
lift.
sewer
I think
runs
there's a lift.
through, potentially, if you built down on the far, down around, what is it, Elm Point? You could run through,
Well, it's north of the freeway is where it was in the report.
in the, north of the freeway.
Yeah.
That system, yeah, it depends on how that's constructed. Now, again, if it was constructed the way we originally had proposed it, when we were looking at that development on the north side, they constructed everything. It was all gravity. The lift stations that well, I shouldn't say it's all gravity, but the lift stations they were going to construct ran through the sewers they were going to construct all the way to the wastewater treatment plant. So it was, that area would not have been affected by impact fees other than the fact that they were paying for all the construction. But let's say that in the interim, there are a couple of them that come in, they construct their own water, they hook up to the existing wastewater system. We would have to analyze what kind of impacts they had on that. So there are different types of scenarios where you could have an impact or not.
And with impact fees, the statute does say that if it's going to be paid for from a different source, such as a developer, that we can't double dip. Nobody would be charged an impact fee if it's already been paid for in a different fashion. So far, we haven't had to address that because our impact fees have been specific to the plant. Now we're branching out into impact fees that would be specific to different distribution areas within the system, and so we'll have to take into consideration a lot of other factors.
But this motion doesn't even pertain to any of that. It just basically says what the impacts are on the system and what's going to be required to, or gives us the opportunity to assess what impacts fees will be required.
All this does is tell us what facilities will be impacted by growth.
Right.
At that point, then someone's going to, if you approve this and say, yes, that we agree that these facilities will be impacted by growth, then we will pass it on to Ellers, and they will do an analysis of the financial stuff, and then you guys will have to review that, make a determination. They'll probably come in, lay out the zones based on the watersheds that we have that are consistent in the facilities that are going to be proposed in each one of those, and then you guys will review that again. But this is just basically saying, yes, these are the facilities, and that they're consistent with what we would expect.
I recommend that the motion be read.
This one?
Yep.
Okay, the motion that we're considering here is recommend the city council approve the facilities assessment study dated August 2014. Be it moved by the Public Works Board of the City of Lake Mills as follows. Section 1, that the facilities assessment study prepared by Strand and Associates dated August 2014, copies of which are attached hereto and made a part hereof, are hereby approved. Section 2, that the city manager is authorized to file said facilities assessment study and to take such actions as necessary to implement such facilities assessment study. The Public Works Board does hereby recommend the City Council to approve this study and authorizes the Council President to sign the motion. Well,
Yeah,
Public Works Board Chairman.
yeah.
So this, this motion has really nothing to do with the impact
Fees.
fees.
Right,
No, it's just the facilities.
right.
But as we know, one drives the other.
Right. You can't have impact fees without this study.
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve motion 14-12-1.
I second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Comments? Now, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Reich?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Shar?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is number 8, discussion recommendation on South Main Street lights. And we have lots of information about street lights.
Yes, and if you drove through Lake Mills tonight and you drove down Main Street from Madison to Lake, you'd note that on one side of the street there was some decorative, what we are going to call pedestrian lighting, and on the other side there was some street lighting. And the street lighting was on green, it's actually, I think, brushed aluminum poles that are painted green, and they go up and they have a cobra head on them that shines over the street.
That's in what area?
Right downtown.
Yeah.
Basically from Madison Street down to Water Street, but
Yeah.
the pedestrian lighting is around the park, and so
Yeah.
that's the only area that you would see that pedestrian-style lighting, which is more historic. I guess the issue from my standpoint is that the state's going to want to see something that puts more light out than the pedestrian lighting. Right now, we have cobra heads on arms off of wood, off of wood poles. All our electric lines in that area are in the backyards. A lot of it's going to be put underground in the next year or two. The discussion was and has been that we wanted something on South Main Street that looked more historic and decorative than wood poles and arms. Even maybe more so than the brushed aluminum arms that we have in the downtown that aren't the pedestrian lighting, similar to this style right here.
Is it okay if I just stop you and ask a few questions?
Sure.
So South Main Street currently has LED lighting, correct?
Correct.
And does that LED lighting currently meet the lighting levels that the state will require for the rebuild?
Well, technically, because it's a connecting highway, the state requirements don't fall in. We checked that with the state, and we don't have to light according to their standards.
But will they require those standards during this rebuild?
No. That's what I was
What
told
they will
today.
pay for is a different story. Okay, so we want to make sure that we get some money out of it. We don't want to pay for all those lights ourselves. That's a lot of lighting.
Right.
Right. Just one more question was, right now it's the lights are lit by overhead wiring, correct?
Most of them, yeah.
And it'll be underground in the future. Will that be run from the back of each lot to the front to the light, or will it be a run along the street?
It'll be a run along the street. We can daisy chain those together. We may have to have a couple of different sources simply because of the cross streets, but yeah, we can run that underground
Okay.
along the street mostly.
All right, thanks.
We can use our existing heads on a pole like this. But because you can see it just bolts on to the end here, and you have a hook in the pole. So we could use our existing systems on these types of poles.
I just want to bring just a couple of points. And first of all, I agree completely with Mrs. Fritz. The second point I want to make is that we're cutting down every tree on South Main Street that's on the
Tree line.
tree lawn, every single one. So for the next 20 years or more, these street lights are going to be the focus of South Main Street. So they need to be great, not just nice, but great. And I think for the amount of time that these street lights are going to be in place, money should not be necessarily the driving factor, or at least not the first driving factor on this.
What kind of streetlights do we have on North Main Street where most of the trees have died?
Just wood poles with arms, same as on South Main Street. But there, the power line is actually on the street, so those poles are actually power poles, are not streetlight poles.
In other words, North Main Street is even uglier than South Main Street currently is.
Yes.
To some people.
The,
To me, they're up 25 feet. I don't pay a lot of attention to them.
Yeah. But Steve's point is a good one, that on South Main, they're light poles. On North Main, they're power poles, and there's a difference there.
the debate for me is that, I guess, we need to look at a pole that's similar to this. I mean, if it's the kind that we currently have on Main Street with a steel, brushed steel and a Cobra head out, or if we're going to a more decorative light, we need to have something that's out over the street. These type here, they're pedestrian lighting, they're not, you can see how even the utility companies are setting them up for how the design is. You need to be able to get them out over the street, create lighting on the street, create a pattern of lighting on the street. So what I was trying to do is put together as much information on what kind of lighting and how decorative we could get, and what heights we would look at. Obviously, they show that, you want a certain height here where you got semi-trucks, so you're going to want to make sure that they're up high enough so that they're not an issue with semi-trucks, and that they're back far enough. And I've had situations where we had fiberglass poles, and after a number of years of people weed whipping around them, they got thin enough that they actually just fell over. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the construction standards and those types of things of the pole, as well as the lighting, and what kind of downcast you're getting and how much lighting you're generating, what color. LED now has a broader range of colors than they did even 5 years ago when we first started looking at them. So those are all options that we can start looking at. Of course, each one, as we start to select, becomes more expensive from our standpoint. So the closer we stay to something that the state's willing to consider, so let's say that this one here is, in my opinion, something the state's going to consider. And they will help us fund. They will consider it consistent with what their requirements are. And we can get a pretty nice looking pole. And then there are obviously a whole different set of heads that we can put on there.
So will the state pay for a decorative pole, 100%?
No, they will pay whatever they would pay for a pole that was as close to that as possible. But then we can also,
As close to what is possible?
they have a couple poles that they are willing to pay.
Oh, okay.
And the one that would be closest to this one, they would probably give us those dollars towards that. Then we also have, we also get additional money to invest in architectural features, which could be put towards streetlights if that's our architectural feature. And the city would just have to borrow some additional money if we went over and above what was considered. I mean, we're borrowing about $500,000 towards street improvements on this project anyways.
Do you have an example of the state's poll?
It was the one I used here. This is going to be pretty similar to what the state had a couple different options, but most of them are going to look like this.
Those are the standard ones.
Yeah, they're just a standard
yeah.
pole.
Yeah, it's basically just a brushed aluminum, and I think they're 33 feet tall they'll allow for. That's a lot of pole. That's more than we need, but
Yeah, I don't think this one's 36. This one's, yeah.
So what height are we talking about, 25, 22?
23.
Well,
We try to stay about 23, give or take.
In the dimensions of this one, this is 25 feet.
Okay.
This is 20. This is 16. This is 14, and
So like that, in that example, that looks like it's pretty close to that, on that second page, that Park Ridge Barrington, except the Barrington's a little more fancy. It has a little scroll work on it going to the arm. And I would think something like that with with outriggers for hanging those banners like they have in Jefferson. Something like that, I think, would be, really dress that area up.
This one right here, Steve.
Mine's in
Think
color.
it's important to shine light on the sidewalk as well?
Well, that's, they had some models there that had
On the
a
back-
street light about halfway up or some.
On the back page.
On the back side, yeah.
Mission Trails Augusta, on the back page of the catalog we were given, they have a pedestrian light, which is closer to the sidewalk.
Think about the sidewalk on the other side of the street and how much light that's going to get.
Well, I think the plan was to have the lights on both sides of the street.
Is that correct, Steve? Or Paul?
We currently have lights on one side of the street, except in the downtown area, we have them on both sides. But that's not impossible, but you also have to think about the lighting spread on the light too, because you can light a lot of area with a light on one side.
Oh, okay.
It's not as, there we go.
There's a variety of lighting patterns. Some will what they call backlight, go to the side. If we put these in the tree lawn and we get some backlight to them, it'll light the sidewalk.
Okay.
And now typically, and obviously we can do anything we want, as Steve said, we'd alternate lights on either side, so one would be on the east side, one on the west side, and you'd go down the street that way, but you don't have to. You can do it all on one side.
Yeah, but
You
would
can-
that create dark spots on the sidewalk?
On the sidewalk, yeah.
Because I've been thinking, I just was going through some town, I think it was Madison, where they had rebuilt the street, and they had basically lights that we've got around Commons Park, but on both sides of the street. And I think it was a boulevard, and they had it down the median. It was very well lit.
Yeah. Every light gets a little more expensive. I realize that that's not going to be the driver, but that's not just the installation cost. Then there's maintenance costs, there's cars bouncing off them costs, and that sort of
When
thing.
we put
So-
in the lights around the park, Al Lou was going to take and extend northward on Main Street. Did we ever do that?
No.
No, the wiring is in the ground for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It's in the ground on the east side of the street, but we never did move it.
This one here is something that might be,
which one?
Lake Forest Candy Cane?
What page is that?
mine doesn't have page numbers on it. It's on the
Last page.
Last page? Oh, I see it.
And remember, there's two parts to it. There's the pole, and then there's the fixtures themselves, so you can select them independent of each other.
Right. And most of these poles, I've done the investigation on, and they do have options for, in fact, this one here includes the bracket right in the diagram for banners and things, so. And then there are the multiple headsets, and, like, in this one here, there are these 4 downcast lamps.
And then every one of those has got a different lens you can put on it.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to get so bright that it's going to shine in somebody's bedroom window or their living room.
That's the number one complaint about streetlights, is
Yeah.
that they shine in my
And
house.
rightfully so, yeah. They should be engineered properly where they shine, where they're supposed to shine. Other than that, we just got to fire the Public Works Director.
He'd probably go willingly.
Obviously, the higher up you get, the less lights you need, the less poles you need per, and so, like, if you're trying to make the appropriate, the state does have a standard for how much lighting you have to have on the street.
Yeah.
And so, to hit that requirement, if you're having like pedestrian ones, you have to have a lot more poles per foot than you would if you had these types of poles. So that's a
Yeah.
big difference. The other item is that all of these poles are specialty poles. And,
Based on the decoration.
yep, they're decorative type and they're specialty poles, so, like the ones downtown, they stopped making them after 7 years. And then everything is special cast, and then after a while, they won't even do that.
In other words, it's a style that's not, doesn't stick around?
Doesn't stick around.
So then you just have to order extras. Keep them on hand. I mean,
Well,
somebody's going to
yeah.
get one.
Yeah, well, eventually you run out of those too. That's what happened to us. And then you're starting to scrap for, what kind of pole is close enough, or do you spend the extra money to go out and have a special cast one done for you, or?
So you're saying that we can't get the poles around the park?
You can if you pay for a special casting, but generally you want someone to be buying somewhere around 500 of them in order to be able to do that, so.
Now, in the tall ones around the park aren't that unique. So
No,
that-
they're not.
those would be fairly easy to find, but something like this one, it's got a little more design to it. And they do have a long life, so it would take a car usually, or after many, many years of salt, not so much the brushed aluminum pole, but sometimes the concrete base that they're attached to will start to crack and fall away. Notice that most of these decorative poles will require a concrete base. So it's more than just popping a pole in the ground and sticking a light on it.
Based on what we provide them, which is why they're pressing for a decision, they will design the streetlight system. So, if you give them this pole and you give them a certain type of head with a certain color light, then they have to determine how many poles go in to meet
Would
their.
it be possible to get a sample, and when we put the lights out around the park, we had, Al got samples that he brought in, and we took a look at them.
You mean the heads?
Well, no, he had the pole there as well.
Time an issue?
I don't know, you'd have to check and see if, we have to have a decision in by the council meeting in January, which would be for this group met again. But we could probably, you guys could look at it, we could probably have it for the council meeting.
I can try. If you've got some that you want to narrow in on, we can sure try. Yeah.
And if we can't get the pole, the head, or seeing it, I always like seeing it
Yep. Yep.
rather than just the picture.
If I may mention one other thing, Steve's mentioned the color of the lights a few times, and with LEDs, there's a difference in efficiency based on the color of the LED, which can translate into some significant long-term powering costs. I mean, LEDs are fairly cheap compared to traditional lighting as it is, but, the whiter you go in the spectrum, the more efficient they are. But then sometimes, depends on your opinion, sometimes people feel like that very white LED light color is kind of abrasive to the eyes, and so the softer you go in the spectrum, the less efficient they are. So I guess it's just something to keep in mind. That's maybe a little bit farther down the line.
What temperature, do you know?
These are in the 5,000 Kelvin range, I believe. Really white light.
That's what we have now?
I think so. 45 to 5,000.
So
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
does the state pay for LED lighting nowadays?
Yes.
Well, that's a nice change.
Well, and we're at a little bit of an advantage that we put LEDs in already, so they would have to, if I understand right, replace at that cost. Now, the nice part is that when we put those LEDs in, 2 or 3 years ago, they were about $500 a head. Now they're down to $250. So
And when we take these down, we get to reuse them, right?
they're still worth $500 a head to me, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we would be able to reuse them, absolutely, and the poles too. I mean, we're not going to lose out on that deal, but in regard to the samples and the poles, I guess if you can then narrow down to what you're looking at, And quite honestly, I think, my opinion only, that the pole, the Lake Forest one, is too tall, that keeping to the 23, 25-foot range, it keeps the lights kind of in the, so you can see them, so that if they're a decorative pole, they're not just so tall that they're a blob in the sky, but if you're going to do a decorative pole, make one that people can see. And that's certainly tall enough to, I mean, trucks have to be a maximum of, what, 11 feet tall, 11 to 13, something like that?
13, yeah.
So we're still well above them. The lighting patterns on LEDs now are whatever you want, so we can make it as wide and as deep as you want. But obviously, a shorter pole is going to be a little less expensive, and then we've got equipment that we can maintain them. If we get too tall, then we may not be able to do it with what we've got for bucket trucks now. But so I just, if that's the design, we can see if there's a smaller version of it. And if you're looking at wanting one light to light the street and one for the sidewalk,
In other words, like a double.
yeah, or as you see, that one's got one going toward the street and one going toward the sidewalk. I'm going to bet that there's actually a difference in the wattage of the sidewalk one. It's typically not as bright. And then you also have the problem with the one toward the sidewalk. That'd be the one that's going to shine in people's windows. And
Well, that, and we're only putting them on one side of the street, so who gets their sidewalk lit?
well, and that's your other decision. Do you
Yeah,
want to go both
that's-
sides, or how do you
you're
want to do it?
Yeah. I
Well,
thought
I
there-
mean, if we get, I'm looking at this, the Park Ridge again, I'm getting back to, I did a lot of time on these, looking through these things, and it's got a street view, and that outrigger is long enough where it's gonna illuminate, the street nicely.
You're talking about the Park Ridge Barrington and?
Yeah, and you see you can look down the road and you can see the others, that looks like that outrigger extends at least to the first third of that width of that street. And I would think that would be wide enough to not only illuminate the road, the street, but also the sidewalks. And without any trees to block the light at night, I would think it would do a pretty good job until the trees get up the size.
Well, my 2 cents are, I think that's a reasonable pole, reasonably good-looking pole to use as well. And, having something in that 20-plus foot range cuts down on the number of poles and allows you to get the light to both sides with just having streetlights on one side.
And I would add that the, banners would be included on that for cosmetic purposes.
Yeah, I think most of them, especially if it's a brushed aluminum, I don't know, if sometimes they come pre-drilled, or we would simply have to drill
Okay.
the pole for that.
And
Or we
then
can
also, in
check
keeping
that.
with the street lights for the rest of the city, that dark green color that we're using now, I think would be a good color.
I was going to suggest the happy hour post. Because
Like that?
would cause
I'm
a
looking for
moment
lighting
of
patterns. I had a bunch of stuff
thought
on there.
and
So you can see it all
reflection
go back to
on
the side.
people entering the city.
We can put those in front of all the taverns.
I think that's where it was at a tavern.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is there any painting maintenance needs to be done with the poles?
You know what, don't have a lot of history with decorative poles. These we haven't had to. I
We
would,
painted the ones that are, the tall ones that are downtown, they were just brushed aluminum, so they had that color. We painted them that color 10 years ago. And they look pretty good to me yet.
yeah. I mean, anything that sits outside is going to require something eventually, but I will buy from a reputable company, and they'll last a while.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can see that, Steve, but that's the lighting pattern. Show how some of it goes back to the sidewalk, like is it type 3?
Yeah, It's where my dad grew up at. It's the old mining town on Highway 11.
This may be really difficult to see, but if you look in the lower right-hand corner there, those are the different lighting pattern types. There's 1 through 5. And I'm sorry for the copy, but if you look at type 3, you'll notice that some of the light does go back as opposed to always on the street. So if we indicate to the state that we want some light on the sidewalk and that we'd like to go to a type 3 lighting pattern, that will put some light back on the sidewalk.
I was just thinking of thought, like, for example, if we're interested in the Park Ridge Barrington, that says Schulzburg, maybe making a trip down to Schulzburg might do, instead of having it brought here,
Shellsburg. We call it Shellsburg.
Schulzburg. And I assume everything is downward casting instead of trying to illuminate the stars.
Everything that we've shown you is dark sky compliant.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to make a recommendation? Do we want to get some more information, request some information, go look at some polls?
I'd like to make a recommendation that we go with the Park Ridge Barrington. It's utilitarian, yet enough fancy stuff on there to give it some character. And I think it's going to be high enough and also spread, especially if we go with the right type of lighting, that it would get the sidewalks a little bit lit up too. So I don't know, to me that looks like I didn't see anything out that I liked better than that in all the information that we've got.
And just so we're clear, when you refer to that, you're talking about the pole and the fixture.
Yeah, not necessarily the sodium fixture. I think we should go with
Oh, LED, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that design of fixture.
Yeah, something that's got some character.
Okay.
Why don't you put it back on the screen? My wife picked that one, too. She liked that, what would you call that there?
The support
The little
piece?
metal loop thing there. Yeah, the brace, the kind of fancy design of the brace.
Filigree.
So currently, we have a motion.
I guess my wife will second Rudy's motion.
With your help. I guess I would really like to see it in the flesh, rather than make a decision here. And I'll volunteer to run down and take a look at it. And I want to see it at night. Like at sunset. and then into the evening.
But if we have a January deadline for this board,
We can try and push it off.
all right,
You can at least get 2 more weeks. Go from January 6th till after that, to the next council meeting.
Were there any other nearby towns that they had?
well, isn't Park Ridge, those are in Illinois. You can take the train down there. Those are on the Metro train route as well.
Well, Schulzburg, that's just,
It's just west of Monroe and Highway 11. Yeah,
take
Yeah.
2-hour drive, hour and a half drive.
yeah,
But brings back some cheese if you go.
yeah. There's a
No,
lot of
not from
cheese
Monroe.
factories down there.
That's Lindbergh.
Well, currently,
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
currently, we have a motion and a second, so we need to either vote on that or withdraw those, or,
Well, I'm gonna, you can go down there and look at it if you want, but I'm not gonna, that's what my motion, I'm gonna keep it.
And I will see what we can do about getting some kind of sample. Maybe a quarter-size sample or something like that if they have it, but I'll be happy to do that.
And I'll be willing to run down there.
and this is a recommendation, and so further input at the city council level can certainly be made.
Yeah, so if you go see it, if.
And you find out it's ugly.
Ugly, we can have a motion to reconsider.
Tell your council representative.
And just, I'm going to clarify one more thing. You want it green, right? Do you want that in the motion?
Yeah, I
or-
think so.
Yeah, that's an old-fashioned color.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Reich?
I think I abstain on this stuff.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
I guess so.
Mr. Shar?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye. Motion passes. Next is recommendation for future agendas.
Anything that's coming up that we need to be aware of?
We're probably going to try and have the bid documents ready for Bronze Court and Cook Street. Oh, they'll probably be up and ready. That's one I know of. We have all the information on the permits for the wastewater treatment plant too, so that's probably something we'll finalize and you'll see some documents on.
Do we need a report on salt?
We have lots.
All right.
My bigger concern is less about salt and more about freeze thaws.
Yeah.
I anticipate this year we're going to have a record number of freeze thaws, up from the one we had a couple of years ago, which was at a historic high.
We're going to see probably 50 on Sunday.
So you can anticipate that we're going to have a lot of bad roads in the spring.
Yeah, our biggest concern will be cold patch as opposed to salt. And I think we talked about salt. The salt is okay. It's the transportation that's going to be tough.
We have had a request from the school district to help them get salt.
We can try that. I'm hoping sometime early next year, February, March, we can talk a little bit about some updated metering systems, water and electric metering systems. We're trying to get that information together for you.
All right. All right, and if nothing else, then I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.